A man is walking onto the battlefield and something is deeply, horribly wrong with him. He has thrown away his armor. He stands almost naked in the freezing air. His whole body is shaking, his teeth chattering like he's just been dragged out of an icy river. His face is swelling and darkening, turning a strange, deep shade of red. And then he opens his mouth and begins to howl, a sound that isn't quite human, and bites down hard on the iron rim of his own shield. A moment later, he stops feeling anything at all. You can cut him. You can burn him. He doesn't even flinch. He just keeps killing, with the raw strength of a bear, tearing through enemy and friend alike. This is a berserker, and the single biggest mystery in all of Viking history is one simple, terrifying question. What turned an ordinary man into this? Because the berserkers were absolutely real, and for over 1,000 years, nobody has been able to fully explain how they did it. Was it a drug? A poison? Some kind of madness? A dark ritual? The answer is one of the great unsolved riddles of the Viking world, and the truth may turn out to be far more disturbing than any drug. It runs deep. Let's get into it. Start with what they actually were, because even their name is a clue. The word berserk, as in going berserk, comes directly from them. In Old Norse, berserker most likely means bear shirt. These were warriors who wore the pelt of a bear and believed that by wearing it, they could pull the bear's spirit and savage fury into their own bodies. They were devoted to Odin himself, the god of war and frenzy. And in battle, the old texts describe them as mad as dogs, as strong as bulls, and able to kill a grown man with a single blow. But it was the transformation itself, the rage they called berserkergang, that truly terrified everyone, because it followed a strange and very specific pattern. First came a violent shivering, a deep chill and a chattering of the teeth. Then the face would swell and change color. Then the fury simply exploded, howling, bellowing, foaming at the mouth, and that bizarre animal habit of biting down on the edge of their own shields. There's a little carved game piece, 900 years old, that shows a berserker doing exactly that, gnawing on his shield like a wild beast. And the most chilling part of all, in that state, they stopped feeling pain. The sagas swear they were impervious to fire and iron. And then, when the rage finally burned itself out, they would collapse, drained, weak, and useless for days. Stop and think about that pattern for a second, because it matters. The shivering, the swelling face, the explosion of rage, the total collapse afterward. That is not just a man getting angry. That is a human body being hijacked and driven by something. The only question is, driven by what? So what on earth could cause all of that? For more than 200 years, the most popular answer was a single, famous thing, a mushroom. The bright red, white-spotted fly agaric, the classic toadstool straight out of a fairy tale. The theory, first dreamed up back in the 1700s, was that berserkers swallowed it just before battle to unleash the rage. There is just one enormous problem with that idea. It doesn't actually work. Fly agaric doesn't turn you into an unstoppable killing machine. It makes you nauseous and drowsy, vomiting, your arms and legs going numb. As one museum flatly put it, it would have made them completely worthless in a fight. The single most famous answer in this whole mystery is almost certainly wrong. So a modern scientist went hunting for a better fit, and what he found was far more sinister than any fairy tale mushroom. Not a toadstool, but a poison, a weed called henbane, a member of the deadly nightshade family that grows wild across Scandinavia. And when you lay out exactly what henbane does to the human body, right next to the berserker descriptions, the overlap is genuinely unnerving. Henbane unleashes wild aggression and delirium. It floods the body with a surge of strength. It turns the face red and flushed. It deadens pain so completely you might never feel the blade that's actually killing you. It even creates a desperate urge to tear off your own clothing, which could explain why these warriors ripped away their armor. And afterward, splitting headaches, blurred vision, and days of crushing exhaustion. Almost every single detail lines up perfectly. And here's the one last piece I saved for the very end, because it is more disturbing than any poison. Because for all of that eerie matchup, there is one thing nobody has ever actually found. Proof. No bag of henbane seeds buried beside a warrior. No hard evidence at all, which cracks open a far darker possibility. What if there was no drug? What if the berserkers dragged themselves into that monstrous state using nothing but their own minds? Through ritual, through belief, through raw and deliberate willpower. Stop and think about which of those is genuinely scarier. A man poisoned out of his senses isn't truly in control of the horror he commits. But a man who can choose to switch off his fear, his pain, and his own humanity, and become a beast on command, completely sober, that is something far more frightening than any drug could ever be. Now, the honest truth is that we may never know for certain. Some scholars think it was epilepsy or mental illness or simply wild exaggeration in stories written down centuries later. But there is one final clue that tells you almost everything. The Berserkers were the most feared warriors in a people who feared almost nothing on Earth. And in the end, the Vikings did the single most revealing thing imaginable. They outlawed them. The same men who raided and terrorized half of Europe decided that these warriors were simply too dangerous to keep around and banned them outright. So whatever the Berserkers' true secret really was, a poisonous weed or a darkness they could summon at will, it was real enough and terrifying enough that even the Vikings wanted it gone. On a battlefield full of monsters, the Berserker was the one thing the monsters themselves were afraid of.